Okay, so good evening, everyone. And so this year is going to be dedicated to Purim. And the topic is one of the deepest and most fascinating mysteries of Purim, which is the mitzvah of eradicating Amalek, eradicating any trace, any memory of Amalek. Who were the Amalekites? What were they about? How can we understand this very hard to swallow mitzvah in a more Hasidic or spiritual way? And so our starting point is really the verse we're coming out of, Shabbat Zachor, and we're just between Shabbat Zachor and Purim. And the reason Shabbat Zachor is just before Purim is that, again, we remember, Zachor is to remember, we're trying to remember what Amalek did to us when we came out of Egypt. As we were coming out of Egypt, we can say that the first people to enslave us were the Egyptians, but that was because we came into their land and then we grew there and then we were enslaved there. But the first people to attack us, the first people to be anti-Semitic in the sense that they didn't just enslave us when we were in their country, but they actually went out of their way to attack us as we were going through the desert, were the Amalekites. And as the Midrash says, that the Amalekites were the ones to cool the bath. The Jewish people were like a hot bath. They were fresh out of Egypt, having the miracles surrounding this exodus. And all the peoples were afraid. Everybody wanted to attack the Jewish people, but nobody dared to. And then the Amalekites were crazy enough to jump into the hot bath and make it cooler. So, and then after this battle, then the Torah says, Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you as you were coming out of Egypt, that it came in your way, karcha b'derech, and it attacked the weak people at the end of when you were weak, and you were tired, at the end of your shiur, all the people coming out together, they attack the weak. And then there's something very mysterious that's said, and that is that Timche et zecher Amalek mitachat hashamayim. We have this commandment to eradicate any memory of Amalek from under the skies. And then immediately it says, Lo tishkach, you shall not forget. It starts with remember and with not forget, do not forget. But in the middle, it says you need to eradicate all memory. So there's this double-sided sword or double-sided dictum that says we need to clear them out, erase them all together, but we also have to remember them in some way. There's these two movements, two parts to this whole story, that Amalek, we need to totally forget about them and erase them and make sure they don't exist in the world at all. And on the other hand, there's also this saying that we need to always remember it. So there's this movement of pushing them and erasing them, but also another movement of somehow preserving them in some way or preserving something that they have. Now, one of the things that was said in regarding to how Hashem wreaks his vengeance on people, it was said in the Gemara, and it's often said about Amalek specifically, is that the idiom in the Talmud says that the forest is cut down using an axe that was made, or at least the handle of the axe was made from the forest itself. You cut down the forest using something that's coming out of the forest. So somehow this may explain this paradoxical notion of eradicating Amalek. Amalek is like the forest that I need to cut down. But in order to do so, I need to remember or preserve or maintain something from the Amalekites. I need to use their weapon against them in some way. I need to take something that they have. There is something about Amalek that I need to use in some way, and I'm using that in order to fight them. So that may be one way of looking at it. Another even deeper way of looking at it would be to say that it's not just that remembering Amalek, preserving something from Amalek, actually has to do with, in some mysterious way, of rectifying Amalek itself. There's something about Amalek that's the epitome of evil, the epitome of anti-Semitism, the epitome of this irrational kind of hatred, and we need to act in the same sort of proportion. But despite all of this, there are clues that at the end of the day, what we want is to somehow bring them into the fold of God's service in some way, or even to convert them. And we see this because the very beginning of the story of the Amalekites, and also the very end of the story of the Amalekites, has to do with conversion into Judaism. So not only in the end of Megillat Esther, the scroll of Esther, we are told that many, many people converted, we're also told by the sages, by Chazal, that in the future, the sons of Haman, right, him and all of his 10 sons were hung, but apparently had grandchildren, because the children of his children are teaching Torah in Bnei Brak. They all converted to Judaism. That's the end of the story of Amalek. Is that we first had Amalek himself, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then we had the people of Amalek attacking us, and they weren't completely killed, they were only weakened. That's the term the Torah uses, that Yoshua, Vayachlosh Yoshua, he weakened them, he didn't vanquish them. And then there was Agag, who again was not killed in time by Shaul and had enough time to bring a child to the world, which became Haman. And then Haman also, he was killed and his children, but his grandchildren survived. But at the end of all of these generations of Amalekites, they all, or the main ones, the grandchildren of the descendants of Haman, convert and become teachers of Torah. So the end of the story of Amalek has to do with conversion, but also the beginning of the story of Amalek has to do with conversion. Why? Because we know that Amalek was the son of a mysterious woman called Timnah. She's mentioned in Bereshit. And Timnah, it says, was the wife of Eliphaz. Eliphaz is one of the sons of Esau. Timnah married Eliphaz and gave birth to Amalek, the first Amalek, the child Amalek. And here again, the sages enter the story and bring something amazing into the story. They say that Timnah very much wanted to convert to Judaism, the mother of Amalek, before she married Eliphaz. Before Amalek was born, she really wanted to convert to Judaism. She asked Abraham to convert her. He wouldn't agree. There was something about her that was too far away, there are a lot of stories of what happened there. But it was something Judaism couldn't take in. So she was rejected, and then she went to Yitzchak, and he also rejected her. And then she went to Yaakov, who also rejected her. And 3 times she tried to convert. Nobody would accept her. So she said, well, if I can't be an important part of the Jewish people, I'll be someone less important, but I have to be part of these people. So she married the son of Esav. Yaakov didn't accept her, so she went to the family of Esav, married his son, and Amalek was born. And really what Chazal are saying by this is that they're saying it was somehow our fault that Amalek was born. If Yaakov would have converted her, then Amalek would never have been born. Or, maybe put it another way, Amalek would have been Jewish. Amalek would have been born Jewish. The same soul, the son of Timnah, would have been born Jewish. So it starts with the mother of Amalek really wanting to convert, and then she isn't converted, and then her son becomes the most bitter enemy of Judaism.
Was she the mother of Amar?
No, Timnah, no, she's later. I mean, well, Chazal said she was contemporary with all 3 generations, but she was in the generation of Esav, and then she married Eliphaz, Esav's son. So she wasn't Abraham's mother at all.
But she was there. I don't know why I remember somebody telling me that.
No. There is a name to Abraham's mother, but I forget it now. But it's not her, it's someone else. Yeah. So there's something about Amalek that it starts with a soul wanting to convert but is rejected, and it ends at the very end, after all the hatred and all the wars and all this terrible conflict that the Jews and the Amalekites symbolize, it ends with them converting as well. So maybe another way of understanding Timche et zecher Amalek lo tishkach, erase all memory, but remember, and do not forget, is that we need to not just use their weapon against them, but we actually need to pull them into the fold. So there's an expression in English that says, if you can't beat them, join them. But here we can say there's a twist on this, which is if you can't beat them, have them join you. Invite them to join you. Maybe there's something about Amalek, and we need to invite them somehow, in some way, to be part of us. So this is just the introduction. Now what we want to do is we want to ask, who is Amalek? Now that the Amalekites as a people are no more, and the commandment as an actual physical commandment doesn't apply anymore because there's no group of people we can call the Amalekites. But the Baal Shem Tov has taught us that every mitzvah and every word of the Torah applies to every Jew in every generation, every situation, which means that we have to abstract the whole thing and find the more, something that's above space and time that has to do with Amalek spiritually. And that can be a kavanah for us, something we go into Purim with, thinking, how do we fulfill the commandment of eradicating, but somehow also converting Amalek within us? Now, there are actually several answers given to this. So we're going to now try and sort of draw four different portraits, four different explanations for who Amalek is as a kind of type, as a character, who this character type is, what sort of a person or a drive within the soul Amalek is, what he embodies, and we're going to try and identify each one of them in our lives, in our generation, in our own dealings with trying to serve Hashem and find our way in the world. And so we want to have these four different portraits. And after we list, or we make this full, four-dimensional portrait of who Amalek is, from 4 points of view, then we're going to try, regarding each one of them, to ask, how do we eradicate him, but also in a way that we use his weapon against him, and then therefore we're not just using his weapon against him, we're also containing him in some way, or incorporating him into our nefesh, our soul. So 4 different interpretations, each one, and we'll see there's all kinds of connections between them, but each one stands on his own, but is also connected to the others in some way, or they complement each other, so we'll see. So we're going to start with the first one. First one, it's a well-known, it starts with a well-known remez, a well-known illusion, that by now has become very famous. It's ascribed sometimes to the Baal Shem Tov, sometimes to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, the Berditchever Rebbe. And one of them, or both of them, said, or noted the fact that in Gematria, Amalek equals Safek. Safek means doubt. Amalek equals Safek. Gematrias are very vital to Purim because one of the best ways to understand the very mysterious injunction that Mechayev Inish Livsume, one has to drink in Purim, to the point of Ad Delo Yadav, not knowing the difference between Arur Aman and Baruch Mordechai. The fact is that Arur Aman equals in Gematria Baruch Mordechai, and the same Gematria. So there must be a holiday of Gematriot, and numbers find very hidden and mysterious connections to things that are totally opposite, like Mashiach equaling Nachash. Same goes for Arur Aman, Baruch Mordechai. So Amalek equals Safek. How does this go along with the pshat of Amalek? It goes very well. Amalek, when the people of Amalek, when they attacked us coming out of Egypt, if you look at the verses, it's immediately after the whole incident with not having water, and then Moshe coming to the rock, hitting the rock produces water, and then summing it all up, the Torah says that during this whole situation, the Jewish people were not sure if God was among them or wasn't. If God was or wasn't among them. The expression is, Velo yad'u im yesh Hashem bekirbenu im ayin. Whether God is in our midst or He isn't. Im yesh Hashem bekirbenu im ayin.
Ask a question?
And then immediately afterwards, very next verse, Vayavo Amalek. Amalek comes. So Amalek comes at a moment of doubt, a very, very basic doubt, whether Hashem is with us or isn't. And then Amalek attacks. So that's one connection to Amalek and doubt, but there is actually even a deeper one, which is what happens after they come. So they come immediately after there's this moment of doubt. Although we just came out of Egypt, we saw all the miracles and so on, but we're people of little faith sometimes, and we had this moment of doubt, and then Amalek attacked us. But then we can also see that Amalek represents an even deeper kind of doubt. It's not just that Amalek is using a momentary doubt in order to sort of sneak into your heart, but he actually brings in a great deal of doubt. And we see this beautifully by the fact that the battle with Amalek takes place in a place called Refidim. It's the one stop just before Mount Sinai. So there we have the 7 weeks leading from coming out of Egypt to receiving the Torah, and there are several stops on the way, and the last stop is of course Mount Sinai itself, and the one before that is Refidim, and that's where Amalek attacked us. Just as we are about to fulfill the purpose of the Exodus, to get to the Mount Sinai, to receive the Torah, which is really to receive our own destiny, our own path, our own purpose in the world, not just to be free in a superficial or negative way, free from bondage, but also to be free in a deeper way. En lecha ben chorin, there's no one who's really free until they work with the Torah, osek b'Torah. And this greater degree of freedom, or a deeper sense of freedom, which is called positive freedom, it's not freedom from bondage, it's a freedom to do God's will in the world. Just as we're about to get to that point, that's when Amalek jumps in. And then what happens is that they make a stay in this place called Refidim. Now Chazal say, what is Refidim? Refidim alludes to Rifyon Yadayim, laxity of hands. The hands become lax, and you can't do anything. It's like you're paralyzed. Refidim symbolizes paralysis. It's a state of paralysis that you can't choose. You can't get out of this place. You can't choose going right or going left, going forward or going backwards. You're paralyzed. Refi yadayim. So Chazal say it was because we relaxed our hands, we were lax in doing the mitzvot that we already had, that Amalek comes. That's like saying Amalek is coming because we have doubt. But we can also go the other way around, which is because we were fighting with Amalek, we were stuck in Refidim, we were stuck in a state of paralysis. How is this going along with doubt? The idea is that Amalek symbolizes radical doubt. Doubt could be a very good thing. That Chazal are very doubtful of every proposition put forward, in the Mishnah by other Amoraim. They have a lot of doubt. But radical doubt is something that will never be satisfied. Radical doubt means positing impossible criteria for making any choice. And when you posit impossible criteria, you'll never make any choice. Amalek is like, let's say you want to choose where to live, or you want to choose what to study, or you want to choose where to work, or you want to choose who to marry, or you want to make any choice. And Amalek will tell you, are you 100% sure this is the right thing to do? I can find the disadvantage in the choice you're about to make. And he would always tell you, who said so? Who said that's the right way to go? Maybe there's another way. And he's constantly making you doubt, and keeps pulling you back to the drawing board or back to square one. And really the purpose is that you don't make any choice, that you're stuck in refidim, in paralysis, and this is doubt. So, and there are several beautiful allusions to this if you're talking about Amalek. So one is that it says Amalek, the word Amalek can be taken apart into two words, which is Am, Molek. Am is people, Molek, it means to behead. So what does it mean that they behead you? Beheading is really disconnecting the head, the level of thinking and forming thoughts and plans and ideas, and the level of actualizing those ideas. So they want to behead you in the sense that they want to stop you from translating or or moving from the level of thought to the level of action. They want you to think all day, just don't make any decision. You can go in circles in your head all day, but we want to suffocate you. We want to block the passage between the intellect and the emotions and also actions. So is Amalek. Another hint is that it says after the war with Amalek, it says Milchama leHashem beAmalek midor dor, right? It's an eternal war between Hashem and Amalek, but before that it says Ki yad al kesya. There's a hand on the chair of God. But the name of God is, there's only the first two letters are put there, Yud and Hey. The last two letters are gone, Vav and Hey. Yud and Hey symbolize the level of the intellect, the level of the head. Vav and Hey symbolize the level of the body. The fact that Amalek goes together with just having the first part of Hashem's name, and Chazal say this, that the name of Hashem is incomplete if Amalek is present. He cuts the name of Hashem in half, and he preserves only the first half. The first half is the head. Second half is the body. Remain in the head, study Torah, have a lot of thoughts, have a lot of ideas in your head. You can have a head full of ideas, even Torah ideas. Just don't translate them into action, into deeds. It has to remain like a thought. And there are even more interesting allusions, but we'll suffice with this. And the idea is that, again, Amalek, so who is Amalek, right? We want 4 answers. The first answer is that Amalek is a skeptic. But he's a kind of a radical skeptic that is trying to make sure you don't make any important decision, that you'll never get to Sinai, that you'll never marry, that you'll never find a job, that you'll never progress in your life, you'll never advance to the next meaningful stop, especially if that stop, that station, is your Sinai, is the place that you make your covenant with Hashem, with your own neshama, you remember what your purpose, what your destiny is, and it's going to do everything in its power to cool you off, to make you doubt every decision that you want to make, be a skeptic. So he negates everything. The first portrait, the first interpretation of who Amalek is that it's a very destructive force that wants to make sure you stay in refidim, in paralysis, and it does so by questioning everything so extremely that no answer will ever suffice. No decision and no action would
be everlasting.
You would be able to give answers that Amalek would say, yeah, okay, you convinced me now, because he would always be there to doubt you. It's like trying to build, a tower of cards next to an open window. You build the tower of cards, and then Amalek goes, phew, and he blows it away, and blows it off, and then you never do anything in your life. And it's a part of you that is unable to make any decision because it's never absolutely sure. So that's the first portrait. Again, we're going to go back to all 4 and try and see how we win over them in both senses of the word. Win them over to be part of us and also win over their negative aspect. That's the first portrait, first interpretation, very well known. That Amalek cools you off by detaching your head from your heart, your head from your body, your level of action, and by doubting everything. So that's the first person. The second, different pirush, different style, is that almost the very opposite, is that Amalek has to do with chutzpah, with nerve, and it goes along with holelut, so why is this the opposite? Because this type of Amalek is an Amalek that wants to do everything. The first Amalek wants to do nothing. And whatever you tell him, he goes meh. Or he goes, nah, you can't do it, or he finds a reason not to do it. The other, second Amalek, Amalek number 2, is the very opposite. He wants to do everything. He wants to visit all the countries. He wants to do all the experience. He wants to marry all the people. The first Amalek doesn't love anybody. The second Amalek falls in love with everybody. And he can tell you you're just an amazing person, and he gets excited about you, and then the moment later, he gets excited about someone else. And everything is a possibility. He's trying to run in all directions at once, do everything at once, and he's overexcited in this sense. And the end result is the same. The end result is that you can't do anything seriously or deeply or in a consistent way, that you do it over time because you can't commit to any particular thing. The end result is very similar. And we can even say that these two Amalek types are the two sides of the same coin, in the sense we can imagine a person being one day like the second Amalek, that he wants to eat up the whole world and travel to all the countries and do everything, and then he becomes so satiated so soon, and he feels it so superficial, then the next day he's totally cynical and cold, and everything is off, and nothing excites him anymore. And when you're thinking about, for example, today there's this expression called FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. And it's really a combination of the two. Fear of missing out means you want to be everywhere at once. Maybe there's a better shiur, some other place, there's a better party, there's something else that's better. And then I'm not happy where I am. And it's also the part of me that tells me that this isn't a good place to be, because maybe there's something else. So he wants to be in everywhere at once. He doesn't like where you are. So the second type of Amalek is we'll call him the hedonist. The hedonist. He wants to be everywhere, do everything, experience everything, read everything, watch everything, do everything. And of course, both of them are very much present in today's culture. We can see them in the movies, we can see them in different celebrity types, we can see them in all kinds of different people. They're very opposite, but the upshot, the end result is exactly the same. They both have to do with Amalek as a power attacking us just before we get to Sinai, with the end result being we're in a state of paralysis. It's a different kind of paralysis, one in which we negate everything, and the other one in which we try to make everything positive, to be in favor of everything, but the end result is that someone who doesn't marry and someone who has 100 wives, or is trying to experience everything together, the end result is that they don't have any one serious relationship or one serious path they're going down.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How does, is there Sinai like a short-term thing? Is it a long-term thing? How does there Sinai?
That's the Torah. So the Torah means that's where you understand why you came out of Egypt for. You came out of Egypt not in order to wander around in the desert. You came out of Egypt in order to discover what your purpose is in life and what you have to dedicate your life to.
Well,
and we have our general Torah for everyone. Then there's your personal Torah for each and every one, which is your own special shlichut, your own special calling or purpose.
would you say that like I guess more Eastern way of doing things, like there, I don't know, I'm not an expert in it, but I've been hearing it's like a lot of it's like purposelessness and being okay with it. Would you say that's like the antithesis?
No, that's not Judaism, right?
I know it's not Judaism, so I'm just trying to understand that how.
Yeah, so we do want a purpose, and maybe one of the versions of Amalek is to tell you that you shouldn't have any purpose.
Right, yeah.
Maybe that would be one of the versions. Maybe more like the first one, a bit more like the first one. So he would say every particular thing is bad by virtue of being particular, and you want to be in some abstract unity and be whole with it, and then you remain there, and there's an important expression used by the Baal Shem Tov, it was actually came before, which says Tachlit hayedi'ah shelo neda. The purpose of knowing is, but actually the full version goes Tachlit hayedi'ah sheneda shelo neda. The purpose of knowing, of knowledge, of accumulating knowledge, is that we know just how much we don't know at all. And then the Baal Shem Tov tells this beautiful tiny story about two people who wanted to know the king. And they both realized it's very hard to know the king, and really the king is hiding in his own private chambers and nobody can see him. So one of them didn't even try. He said, well, I'm just going to stay outside the palace, and if there's no way of knowing him, then there's no point in trying, and I'm just going to sit and meditate and try and connect to whatever I can, but I'm not going to get to know the king because it's impossible to know the king. The other one says, well, but it is worth a try. And then he goes into the palace and goes room after room, chamber after chamber, getting to know what the king likes and what the king is all about, and the wisdom of the king, and the treasures of the king, and the art that the king has collected. and he learns more and more, and he's growing closer and closer to God, to the king. So at the end of the day, he reaches the final chamber, and he realizes it's infinite. It's an infinite rooms within rooms. He'll never find the king. However, only regarding the second person can you say that he knows that he doesn't know. And the purpose of knowing is to know that you don't know. The first person was the more Oriental Eastern type that says, well, if you can't know, don't try. And then all you have to do is to unlearn everything, to unknow. And it's a shortcut way, a short route to get to not knowing is saying, well, I'm not going to try know anything. I'm just going to concentrate on not knowing. But the second is a deeper part, is a deeper way of not knowing. Right? It has to do with ad lo yada. The way to get to ad lo yada is by knowing a lot. You have to learn. Even when it says ad lo yada ben arur Haman u'baruch Mordechai, you have to know at least that Haman is the arur one, Mordechai is the baruch one. You're making distinctions. You're not saying the world is an illusion. But then you're saying, although there is bad and good and evil, there is arur Haman and baruch Mordechai, above it there's a level in which somehow it's beyond good and evil in some way. But there is good and evil. So the second type of not knowing is a deeper kind. It goes a long way of trying to know. So getting to Sinai is a path forward to try and know Hashem despite the fact that ultimately is unknowable. And the first type of Amalek, one of the versions of it would be the Oriental type that says, well, since you can't know, don't even try, just be passive, be where you are, concentrate on not knowing.
Isn't like...
Again, that's the negating type. Right? The second type says, no, I want to learn all the religions. I want to know everything. The first type would say, and again, they can be, it's over there.
But isn't, like, I don't mean to get off topic, tell me to stop. Basically, isn't it the same thing then?
So again, so the first two, these two types of Amalek can be seen as one person.
With the Easter, a person knowing that he doesn't know.
No, so that's the whole point of the story of the Baal Shem Tov, is that it's very, very different, because the first person to remain outside of the palace doesn't know anything about the king, because he says it's unknowable. But the second one knows a great deal about the king. He knows the treasures and the wisdom and the books and the art, and that's learning Torah. So despite the fact that God is ultimately unknowable, the more you understand Hashem's will and Hashem's wisdom, the more you, in a far deeper way, you really know that you don't know. You appreciate how much you don't know. It's very superficial to say, I simply don't know, and that's it. The more you learn, the more you deeply understand how much you don't know. And it's far, and the other one, that he doesn't know that he doesn't know. He just thinks he doesn't know.
Interesting.
He imagines he doesn't know. He likes the sort of lazy, superficial kind of experience of not knowing, and he thinks he's so close to Hashem, but he doesn't know anything. The other person also doesn't know Hashem, but he knows he doesn't know Hashem. The more he knows, the more he understands. So that's the sort of trajectory of going to Sinai, and then with Sinai, with the Torah, going forward with learning the Torah, and going forward with doing Hashem's will, also by trying to make the world better. The Oriental type doesn't try to make the world better in the sense of rectifying it, just by trying to have everyone awaken to the same kind of experience of not knowing. Anyway, again, the first type of Amalek negates everything, everything is an illusion, or everything is wrong, or everything is not viable, and that's his way of making sure you're paralyzed. And the second Amalek says you have to do everything, experience everything, but the upshot is the same. Now moving to Amalek number 3. Amalek number 3 is far more like Amalek. So the first two are very much connected to the people of Amalek as we encountered them in the desert. But again, when we're thinking about a particular Amalekite who we have a bitter history with, that would be Haman in the scroll of Esther. And Haman, we can't say that he's either one of the first two Amalek types. He's not the kind of lazy skeptic who stays put, doesn't go anywhere, and says, what's the point, and everything is useless, or everything is, we can't be absolutely sure it's the right way to go, and so on. He's not the type. He knows what he's doing. He has a job, he has a family, he's very... Also, he's not the hedonist type for the same reason. He's not the kind of type to try and do everything at once. He's very focused. He's very ambitious. The third type is the ambitious type, and the klipa, the negative trait that we can identify Amalek with in the third level would be pride or arrogance, ga'ava. It's a more mature kind of Amalek. He maybe when he was young, he was, fluctuating between the first two types, but then he realized it's boring, and it's a better way of becoming Amalek, of being a destructive force, is dafka choosing life in a way. He's marrying, he has 10 kids. It's like a Haredi family almost. He's very solid, and he has a job in the palace, and he builds himself up very gradually from a lowly minister to a higher minister, and then he finds favor in the king's eye, and the king elevates him some more, and he's always thinking how to make it more, but everything is around him. It's all about everyone should bow down before me. And obviously he's aiming at being the king himself. It's very, very clear, just like Achashverosh himself started as a lowly person and became the king. Amalek, then Haman says, well, I can probably do the same. It's always those ministers are they covet the king's chair themselves. And he's working very steadily towards making sure he's on top. He's aiming for the top of the pyramid. And his fault, or the negative trait he symbolizes, is simply pride or arrogance, ga'ava. That despite the fact that he's a solid, and he's working, and he's hardworking, and he's not the first two types that are very destructive, but why is it still Amalek? Because he goes crazy, he goes ballistic if not everyone bows down before him. Which goes to show that it's all just his ego, just his guide. So a third interpretation of who Amalek in our own psyches and our own souls is. So the first one is the passive skeptic, the second one is the active hedonist, and the third one is a more mature type that we can say doesn't seem like Amalek so much, because he knows how to live, he knows how to work, he takes responsibility for the next day, he's active, he's choosing, but it's all very narcissistic, totally narcissistic, and if he's not gaining, acceptance or rewards, or, his name isn't mentioned, and it's not given credit for whatever he does, he goes crazy, because he's not doing it for Leshem Shamayim, for its own sake. He's not doing it for other people. That's why it's an Amalekite force. That's why all the Sifrei Musar, all the Mursha books, the first thing they talk about is Ga'ava. Ga'ava is the source of all the negative traits, just like Amalek is called Reshit Goyim Amalek, the head or the starting point of all the different kinds of non-Jewish people that symbolize the different traits that we're trying to walk away from.
Yeah. How does it contrast and connect whatsoever with the first two? Does it connect at all?
Different proofs. Different proofs, yeah. So again, different types. So now we can say it's 4 alternative interpretations of who and what Amalek is. Right? So it's a third pirush. And we can say, again, like I said, that it's like the first one, the first two Amalek can be the same person. That is fluctuating from one day to the other. And the third Amalek could be what happens when they grow up. And they realize that the best way to maintain your narcissism and your self-centeredness is by growing up, finding a job, and then trying to be at the top. Yeah, so moving on to the fourth type of Amalek. Just like the first two were polar opposites, and we can see them as the same person with a kind of split personality problem, then the fourth one is also like the inverse character of the third one. The third one is all about arrogance and wanting to be on top and feeling better than everyone or more important than everyone else, and therefore wanting to have credit and respect constantly. The fourth type is the melancholy type. It's over there. The melancholy type is the depressed Amalek. The Amalek of depression, of negative thoughts that tell you that you're worthless, that there's no point in anything that you're doing, that you're worse than everyone else, your life is worse than everyone else. And it's a very destructive force, but it's the opposite of arrogance or pride. It's a force that tells you, that weakens you, and makes you go lower and lower and lower, and tells you how worthless you are. And again, we can say that the third Amalek and the fourth Amalek could be two sides of the same coin, and we really see this again with Haman. Haman is working very hard to make sure he's on top, and he sees that he's gaining progress. At some point, the queen invites him to a private banquet with the king, just him and her and the king, and no other minister is awarded respect, and he's elated. It's his dream coming true. He can't believe that he's like the second in command almost, He's the king and the queen want only him. He's having private audience with the king and queen, and it's almost the top of what he could aspire to, other than being the king himself. But then he goes out and he sees Mordechai. Mordechai isn't bowing down to him, and then he goes back to his wife, and he says, "It's all worthless. Kol ze eino shaveli. It's all meaningless because Mordechai isn't bowing down to me. So now I'm totally depressed. Although I reached almost the apex of everything because there's one person that's not bowing down." And here we can see arrogance and pride flipping over into melancholy and depression. And that's a very deep insight that we need to pay attention to. And most people think that depression and low self-esteem, let's say that the cause for depression, most people think the cause for depression is low self-esteem. Is that people don't believe in themselves enough, they don't value themselves enough, they think they're too lowly of themselves, and they should have a better self-image, they should have a higher self-esteem, and they should be told how wonderful and how talented they are. But that's really the minority of cases of depression are coming from low self-esteem. And actually the majority of cases of depression or of low self-esteem, that people saying how terrible I am and how worthless I am and so on, is because subconsciously they have an extremely high image of themselves. And when they realize that they fall from this image, that's what depresses them. And it says in Hebrew, there's an expression that says, so the expression that says, "Kegova hatzipiyot, gova achsavot," that disappointments are a function of expectations. That if you lower your expectations, you're not going to be disappointed. And the higher you raise your expectations, the bigger your disappointment will be. And the same goes not just for disappointment, but also for depression. That people walk around subconsciously with an image in their head that they're supposed to be either perfect or tzaddikim, or that they're supposed to have an perfect life. And because of this subconscious concept that life is supposed to treat me in a certain way because of my self-worth, which is so high, then when I'm not rewarded this, whatever it is that I imagine that I should have, then I become depressed. And I compare myself to other people because I'm sure that I'm at least as good as they are, or maybe better, and I shouldn't be receiving whatever it is that life is throwing my way. And I shouldn't be able to fail at anything because I'm supposed to be good in everything. So if I'm failing at something, I'm worthless. And many of the states of depression, if not most, are really a result of a kind of a deep subconscious sense of pride or arrogance or self-image that I belong to a certain caste or a certain level of being. And whenever life isn't treating me the way that I'm imagining that I'm the kind of treatment, I'm not getting the kind of treatment that I would imagine that I should be getting, then that makes me depressed. And you can see this. The past year I was in two third world countries, which was India and Africa, which is really Purim, by the way, because the Achashverosh is ruling from Hodu to Kush, from India to Africa. So I was in India and Africa this year. And you see, and poor people are very similar everywhere in the world. And one of the things you see about poor people is that they're far happier on the generally speaking, compared to the first world. The first world that has the greatest plenty and material wealth has also the highest rates of depression and suicide and anxiety. And the more things become, better materially, you can see that it goes together with having extremely false expectations that everything is supposed to work your way. And you see this very clearly in very poor societies, that they're happy, they're smiling all the time, and they're toothless smiles, but because they can't afford good dentistry, but they're smiling. You see more teeth with the toothless smiling people than you do with the people who have all the money in the world to buy for the best, dental care. And it's just symbolic of this the fact that they don't expect life to treat them such an amazing way, then they're happy with their lot, to be.
In America, I've heard people say, it makes a lot of sense to me, that because there's so much upward mobility, therefore like the rates of depression are through the roof.
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes a lot of sense. Whereas like in Germany, you're in like in Scandinavia, they're happy.
Well, they also have.
It's complicated. They know their place in society.
Hmm?
They know their place in society. They're much more. It's the old style things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, so the idea is that, but this is another kind of Amalek. So it's really, again, it's the flip side, and you can see Haman fluctuating between the two. One day he's elated, one moment he's elated that he's getting to the top, and then he goes outside, sees Mordechai, goes back to his wife. It's worth nothing. Everything I worked for is worth nothing when I see that Mordechai isn't bowing down before me, and he becomes totally depressed, and then later on, and he has to be humiliated by putting Mordechai on the horse, and he goes back, avel v'chafuy rosh, mourning and bowing down his head, because he can't take any kind of humiliation, any kind of lower status. So it goes really together. Wanting to be on top creates a situation in which, when you're not on top, you become totally depressed. So the fourth type of Amalek, which is connected to the third one, is the melancholy depressed type. So we have the skeptic who negates everything, and then we have the hedonist who wants to do everything, and then we have the ambitious type who wants to be on top of everything, and then we have the melancholy depressed type that feels he's at the bottom of everything. And these are the four types of Amalek. Now we have to go over them again and see how each one of them cannot be beaten straightforwardly. But the whole point of Amalek is that we're eradicating him, but we're preserving him, and we're forgetting that he ever existed, and we're also constantly remembering and reminding ourselves of him. And we want to take down the forest with using an axe made from the wood itself. And we want to convert ultimately Amalek somehow. And just like Timnah wanted in the first place, and just like the descendants of Haman are doing. So we can see this very beautifully. We can go over each one of them, and each one of them, if you go to them with trying to fight them using the exact opposite energy, it wouldn't work. If you're trying to fight the skeptic with certainty, then skeptic would break down your certainty. He would show you that you're not certain of anything, that you can doubt anything. If you want to, you can doubt everything you can. And so it's not going to work. And you can't go to the depressed type and tell him, let's be happy, let's all be happy, let's throw a party. He would become much more depressed. He would give you reasons to, would stick a needle in this balloon.
No, I got from my uncle, he's a psychologist, he told me that it's very difficult to make a depressed person not depressed, because he's actually right, he's not wrong. Meaning, realism and pessimism are very closely related. Yeah. And optimism is a very hard thing to do when you're pessimistic. So again, each one of them, the whole point of Purim, the whole point of the drinking and going ad lo yada and reaching a place of Arur Haman equals Baruch Mordechai, and also choosing to believe in Hashem again, despite the fact that he's now hidden his face, has to do with finding a paradoxical kind of play. It's a playful world. We dress up in Purim. It's all a game. It's all a dance, and we want to dance with Amalek and play with Amalek. If it would have been any other holiday, maybe there would have been a rational explanation or answer to each of these different types. But that's not Amalek. Amalek is the central point. It's like a vacuum, like a black hole, sucks everything in. And it's something that you need to somehow use the black hole,
just like, when people go in space, they use the gravity of a planet to catapult to move to another place. They use the centrifugal. You have to use gravity in order to go in the other direction. In order to drive yourself away from a planet, you're using its gravity. So it's just a kind of game. We have to be a little bit drunk, a little bit tipsy, and then we can see that in all four cases, we're really accepting what they're saying to a certain degree. We're saying you're right, and by saying you're right, we're disarming them and winning them over in both senses of the word. We win them over, and we win. We're not letting them have their way, because it's a bad way. So let's go from the first, go through all of them. So the first one, the skeptic. Skeptic says, are you absolutely sure you want to receive the Torah? Are you absolutely sure Hashem is with you? Are you sure that maybe you shouldn't go to the Torah? Maybe you should check some other religions first. Maybe you should stay here in the desert. And there's something amazing. The battle is won with Moshe raising his arms above his head. When you're thinking about the image of someone raising his hands, what does that symbolize in all over the world? When you raise your hands, it means I'm surrendering, I'm giving up. I give up, white flag. And here, that's what enables them to win. But it's a weird image. He's raising his hands. That's a universal image of giving up. I give up. I raise my hands. But then he's winning. And in a deep way, it's something like this. He's saying to Amalek, you're right. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. Faith and doubt are good friends. They go together. Faith isn't knowledge. Faith isn't certainty. Faith isn't walking on solid ground and having a 100% guarantee that everything is going to work out. Hashem is infinite, Hashem is unknowable, Hashem is mysterious. Joining Hashem is joining something that nobody really understands completely. Just like Naaseh v'Nishma. And the only way to go from a state of radical doubt to a state of emunah is by incorporating doubt into our emunah. And saying, you're absolutely right, Amalek, I don't know. And that's the whole point. I'm going into the fog, as Moses is climbing Mount Sinai is entering a fog. I'm going into the fog and I don't know. I choose to believe. I can also not believe. The whole story of the scroll of Esther is that the sages were unsure if it was written with Ruach HaKodesh or not, or written in a totally human way. There's a long argument that some people say was written with Ruach HaKodesh, some people say no, it's a totally human scroll, written by human people, human beings, it shouldn't be part of the Tanakh. And you can read it as saying it's all emunah, it's all divine providence working throughout the plot of the scroll. You can also say it's just coincidences. I don't see any miracle. There's no miracle. All the miracles it's all nature. It's just coincidence. He happened to hear Biktan and Teresh, and the king he didn't fall asleep. It was all, it could have been, Purim is a lottery. It could have been another way. And you have a choice here. You don't know. You can choose to believe or choose not to believe.
What's the benefit, I guess, in choosing to believe? Meaning, why is that our challenge?
It's irrational. The whole idea of raising your hands above your head is that Amalek wants to detach your head from your heart. And you're saying, well, I can't work around this. What I can do is I can build a channel that goes directly from my heart to something that's above my head, to the crown, to the level, to the superconscious crown, the level that's above their head. That's where emunah is, that's where faith is. And Vayhi Adav Emunah, that's what it says about Moshe. When he raised his hands, Vayhi Adav Emunah Ad Bo HaShamesh, until the sun set. So the pshat is, he raised his hands all the way until the day was over. We can also say that he raised his hand to the level of emunah where the sun sets, where the sun of the intellect and cognition and understanding and rationality, where this sun sets, that's a level that's beyond the intellect, beyond rationality. Amalek, he knows how to attack the rational part of you in order to make you doubt everything. So you say, well, I can only I give up, you're right, I don't know, and I'm summoning a deeper power within myself, which is called emunah, and it's like choosing life. Why do I choose life? I could choose death. They're both as irrational. But I'm going for this kind of irrationality. I'm crazy like you. And you're saying, and this is called doubting doubt. Latil safek v'safek. So for example, when I grew up in a totally skeptic, society that says, who says Judaism is true? Who says Christianity? Who says any religion is true? Who says any kind of mystical or spiritual idea is true? You don't know, you can't prove it, and then you don't believe anything. But then there was a moment of realization that this method of skepticism, this whole system of being skeptic towards everything, I believe that. This is like my religion. My religion is skepticism. And when I realized that, I started doubting skepticism itself. I'm skeptic. Who says you're the one who's supposed to rule over me, Mr. Skeptic? Who says that every religion is, can be put into doubt? Your system can also be put into doubt. Why should I doubt everything? Maybe I should believe everything. Maybe I should believe something. Maybe I should just listen to people who believe things. And then when you're doubting the doubter, that's like using the axe in order to cut down the wood, using the wood itself. And when you're doubt, you're using doubt, you're saying, yeah, you're my friend. But I'm going to use you against you. I'm going to do this self-reflexive action, and by admitting you're right, and therefore nullifying you in some way, and then opening up, and then the road opens to come out of refidim, because when you lift your hands up, what refidim is laxed hands, the hands that are immobile. But then you lift your hands, and you bypass the heads, and you connect to the level of emunah, then you win Amalek, and then the road to Sinai opens, and you can come out of paralysis, because now you can choose something, not because you know it to be 100% true, you don't, but because you have a deep sense of emunah that this is the path to go, that the same God that took me out of Egypt is going to be loyal to me. I don't know this, but I'm trusting Him. Emunah in Hebrew, it means trust, right? Like in the dollar bill, in God we trust. Amin is to put your faith in someone. It's an act. It's not a proposition that you can prove. It's an act that you choose. And it's an act that is both faithful and doubtful at the same time, because faith goes along with doubt. And in fact, in Kabbalah, it's explained that in the highest level of the neshama, of the soul, there's emunah, but that emunah is surrounded by doubts. It's ringed with 5 doubts. That's a Kabbalistic notion. Why 5? What are the particular 5? That's something for another shiur. But emunah is ringed, is surrounded, or it goes together with 5 doubts. In the highest level of the crown, of the ketel, emunah and doubt go together. They're like the bridesmaid, that follow her around. They guard the emunah. Emunah and doubt are, and if your emunah is without doubt, it's a very immature, fragile kind of emunah. Emunah that has doubt, it's like it's immune, right? Immunity is based on incorporating a part of what you want to immune yourself against, and then you familiarize yourself with it, and it becomes part of you. It makes you stronger. So just like the immune system incorporates the virus, so too does emunah incorporate doubt. So the first Amalek is vanquished using his own weapon by incorporating doubt into faith. And that's how we win the first Amalek.
That's very good.
Second Amalek, the hedonist. The hedonist wants everything. He can't accept just Judaism or just monotheism or just monogamy. He wants all the religions, all the spouses, all the lands, not just one eretz, not just one language. He wants to know all the languages and so on. How do we win him over? It's very similar, but it's a different story. We tell him, you're right. You're right. Hashem created everything. Hashem is everywhere. And I also want to know everything and do everything. However, you're trying to do it on a horizontal, on the dimension of breadth. You're trying to go on the superficial level by experiencing all kinds of physical, material experiences, places, tastes and flavors and so on. I want to go on a vertical depth dimension. I'll go all the way deep into focusing on one person and one place and one profession and one religion and one Torah and one way, one path. And I'm going to deepen there. And when I go deep enough, I will find the flavor of all the breadth, but within the depth. Within the depth. Now I'll give two examples of this. We talk about monogamy and monotheism. Monogamy goes like this. The people who are not non-monogamous, who say I'm polyamorous or I'm non-monogamous, I can't be monogamous, they're saying why? Because it's limiting and I have so many sides to my personality. And the different people do echo different sides and I want to love everyone, I can't just limit myself to loving one person, all this. What they're not realizing is that you're not going to know anyone if you're trying to divide your time between a lot of different people. You're not going to know...
It's like having a...
Yeah, good job is another thing, yeah. It's like you're not going to be professional at any job and you're not going to get to know any person well. However, if you limit yourself to one person or one profession and you go deep enough there, you're going to find in a subtle way all the other people in that one person. Because each person is infinite in their depth. And there's layers within layers and levels within levels. And the more you get to know someone, the more you're surprised to realize there's so much more to them than you know. And every day you discover something new about them. And so by going deeper into one person, you find facets of each and every other personality type and every other person. But in a deeper way. And you can say the same goes for polytheism versus monotheism. Polytheism, going to the word of idolatry and the word of mythology, you can say they're so much more colorful. They have all these folk tales and all these, movies and books and ideas and all these deities and all these, again, the mythological stories and the different gods. Each one is like a different person, is like a different part of my own personality. And it's but monotheism is so boring. You have this one God, this one people, you're stuck with the same book each and every year. You go read the same book every year. And it's boring. And again, it's Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph and all these stories again and again and again. But you don't realize that if you go deeper into this one book, and you go deep enough, and you go all the way from the Pshat to the Remes, to the Drush, to the Sod, you're going to regain all the breadth, but in a far deeper way. You'll find all the breadth of all the different novels and movies and cultures and everything you see in the world. You'll find it echoed within the Torah in a far deeper, more meaningful, more, refined and rectified way. And especially if you're going to the inner levels of the Torah, Kabbalah and Chassidut, really the breadth is coming back big time because you have all these, Hashem becomes from an abstract, unknowable thing like the Rambam has it, Hashem becomes, there's all the Sfirot and all the different worlds, the divine worlds, and the Partzufim of Hashem. He has many faces, many aspects. And Kabbalah is so colorful, Chassidut is so colorful, all the Hasidic stories. And you regain the breadth within, just like if you stick to one profession and you realize that in one profession the subtleties and the nuances are so great, it makes you appreciate the depth of all the other professions that you didn't go for. You realize, wow, every other profession has the same kind of depth. When you meet someone from another profession, you can appreciate the fact that they're so well advanced in their own field, because you're well advanced in your own field, and you can understand the depth of a relationship because you have your own relationship, and you can understand the depth of other ideas because you know the Torah so well, and you can feel for the depth of everything. So you get the breadth within the depth. But you do this by becoming it's a rectified kind of hedonism, right? It's an hedonism that goes deeper instead of wider. And that's the way to rectify the second Amalek. Third Amalek, that's right there in the scroll. Haman wants everyone to bow down before him. He says, I'm so arrogant, I'm so important, everyone has to bow down before me. How does Mordechai rectify him? Mordechai does not rectify him by saying, oh, I'm going to show you what lowliness looks like, what humility looks like. No. Mordechai lo yichra velo yishtachaveh. He does not bow down, he does not kneel, he stands firm and tall. He's acting proudly. Why? Because he realized that this kind of arrogant person needs to see a positive kind of pride. Not pride because I'm important, but pride because I'm only bowing down to Hashem. And I want to remind you that there's only one ruler, there's only one God, and you're not him, and I'm not him either. But I'm not asking you to bow down before me, but I'm not bowing down before you. And this a kind of rectified, holy arrogance, which means, and translated into psychological terms, it means saying something like this: when I can identify within me a certain part of me that wants to be acknowledged and made famous and appreciated and bowed down before, I should tell that part of me, I'm not going to sink so low to be such a narcissist that needs constant appreciation. I can live without appreciation. I can live without people admiring me or thinking I'm so important. And it's, in Hebrew we say, "Lo b'kavod sheli," and not
It's below me. It's below me.
It's below me to be so lowly, to ask to be so high. It's below me to want to be so high. And then you're recruiting or you're summoning within you a kind of pride that comes from your neshama. It doesn't come from your ego. It comes from the fact that you have a neshama, you're brought down into this world to do something very meaningful, not to be a narcissist. And you're summoning ga'ava from this part of you in order to fight the negative kind of ga'ava, which constantly strives to have more strength and more respect and so on. And then you can become more humble and know how to, how to accept humility. Mordechai, very clearly we see this, that he is, tearing his clothes and going into mourning and putting ash on himself. But then when Achashverosh tells him, through Haman, now you have to sit on a horse and I'm going to parade you around town, we could have imagined Mordechai saying, no, I shouldn't, no, it's not for me. He says, no, my neshama does deserve it because people need to see what a holy neshama looks like, and it's not me. And the fact you're able to do this means you're summoning a kind of rectified pride that comes from your neshama in order to fight the negative kind of pride that is all about itself, all about me. And so this is like ga'o ga'a, Hashem mitga'e al ge'im. Hashem is higher than the highest one, and which means there's room for ga'ava, rectified ga'ava. Also it says in Masechet Sotah that for a Talmid Chacham it's good to have a little bit of pride. An eighth of an eighth. Right? 1 over... it's 1 over 64. It's batel b'shishim. It's a little bit of ga'ava, but it's very vital. So that's the third one. And then the fourth and final one, that's something we learned about in the Tanya, is that the way to rectify depression using the axe, that he actually, in the Tanya, he uses that particular image of the axe coming from the wood to cut down the wood. He says that the moments you're sad and depressed are opportune moments to practice having a broken heart and doing tshuva. You can't fix depression with the opposite energy, like we said. You have to say, well, if I'm depressed, I might as well be depressed about the right reason. And I'm going to look at where I am in the world and what I'm doing. And you're taking merirut, which is bitterness, negative kind of bitterness, and you're turning it into, it's the other one. You're taking atzvut, and you're turning it into positive bitterness, or we call this positive negativity. And there is an element that says that sometimes when you're really depressed, then just like the previous one, you have to use a little bit of pride in order to lift yourself up. That's like a first aid kind of method. That if I'm told that it jumpstart exactly by saying, no, I do have, purpose and talent and I'm better than that, and it gets you up, if you're really depressed. But a preventative medicine, right, a preventative treatment, that's first aid when you're fallen. But preventative treatment is something that in Chassidut is called lowliness. It comes from King David being lowly in his own eyes and saying, I'm so grateful to Hashem for giving me everything. I really don't deserve anything. My whole life is just one big present. My whole 70 years were given to me as a present. I should never have been born. Every moment is a gift. I don't deserve anything. And then you begin to appreciate everything you have. and you don't fall because you have weaknesses, or life is treating you badly, or because you have faults, or because you even sinned. Then you're saying, I'm fallible. But I'm happy because I think Hashem believes in me, anyway, it's not about me. And ten lo mishelo she'ata v'shilcha shelo. Everything came from Hashem, and I'm just giving back to Him. And this kind of lowliness is a very happy feeling to have, because it relieves you of the burden of the self-image that is the reason you were depressed in the first place. Right? We said that the reason most people are depressed most of the time is that they're burdened by the self-image that they're so important, that they should have a certain life. Lowliness, rectified, happy lowliness, relieves you of the burden of this self-image. It tells you, I'm not supposed to have anything, I'm just human, I'm just me, and this is who I am, and I'm open to identifying what my faults are, and also what my strengths are, in a very clean sort of way. I can see that this is what I need to do, and I'm not going to fall down if people don't bow down before me. I'm not going to get depressed. I'm going to say, okay, I tried, and I'm going to keep trying to do what my thing is. I can see what my thing is to do. It comes from when you come from lowliness, not having all these expectations or self-image of deserving something. Again, you're taking this kind of Amalek, the depressed kind, and saying, yeah, I am lowly, but there's no reason to be depressed about it. It's such a relief. It's such a relief, when you're going up with a balloon, and in order to climb higher up, you need to throw away heavy stuff, and to get you higher. When you're relieving yourself of all this baggage, you're going on with this baggage that gets you depressed, which is, I'm supposed to have this, and I'm supposed to be that, I'm definitely going to try to be the best, the best person I can be, and do all the things that I'm supposed to do in this world, absolutely. But I'm not going to do it in a way that it's of putting myself in the center, or having this kind of, again, this image that I'm supposed to be perfect at everything. And if I'm relieved that it's a good kind of lowliness, I'm incorporating the melancholy type in a good way, in a happy way, the lowliness of the melancholy type, and again, it put a smile on my face. And I can do whatever it is without the baggage of what it means about me, and if I'm successful or not, and so on. And that's why David Amalek, King David, when he won all the battles, he was the biggest warrior, but he had no trouble dancing with the simplest of slaves and maidservants. Yeah, he says, I'm no better than them. And he was very happy. So we can see the perfect image of lowliness and joy working together completely in David Amalek returning the Ark of the Covenant back to Yerushalayim, and just joyfully dancing with all the simplest of people. And because not thinking is above them makes him happy. And the opposite is his wife, Michal, who's reproaching him, looking from the window, and she's very bitter. She's bitter because she has an arrogance that she's still unrectified from the previous king, yeah. And that's why we need the second generation of Malchut. So, these were the four types of Amalek: the skeptic, and the hedonist, and the ambitious type, and the melancholy type, and how to rectify them. And in this Purim we should all say a lot of l'chaims and raise our cups above our heads, so we're connected to this level of emunah, and we're able to dance with Amalek and convert Amalek and win over Amalek at the same time. Hi, if you've gotten this far, you've probably enjoyed the class. If so, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Patreon is a platform designed to help independent creators receive financial support from their followers. These classes take time and effort to make, and any amount really helps. You can check out the link to my Patreon account in the description below. Thank you.